Chapter 1. The Spark Beneath the Ashes. In the beginning, there is no applause. No lights. No soundtrack. No hand to pull you up. There is only silence. The silence between who you are and who you're meant to become. And in that silence, something ancient stirs. Something that cannot be named, only remembered. Every soul walks through a fire, sometimes slow and unseen, like a smolder beneath the skin. Other times, an inferno that consumes everything you thought you were. But the fire is not here to destroy you. The fire is here to reveal you. Because inside every ordinary person, buried beneath distraction, fear, and forgotten dreams, there lives a force so untamed, so unstoppable, it would terrify the world if it ever fully awakened. You were never meant to be domesticated. You were meant to rise. But somewhere between childhood and survival, that wildness was tamed. You learned to fit in instead of stand out. You learned to obey instead of believe. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of your soul, you buried the spark, the one thing that could have changed everything. But let me tell you something forgotten. The spark is not dead. It is waiting. It is waiting beneath your doubt. It is waiting behind your pain. It is waiting in the cracks of your excuses, in the stillness just before you break. This isn't about motivation. This is about remembering who the hell you are. Because if history whispers anything to those willing to listen, it's that the extraordinary were once just like you. Bleeding. Broken. Ashamed. Overlooked. Do you think Edison didn't drown in failure before he lit the world with his madness? Do you believe Carnegie didn't tremble as he clawed his way out of poverty's grip? Do you imagine Lincoln didn't walk the halls of despair, haunted by death and humiliation, before he carved unity from the bones of a nation torn in two? These men weren't born supernatural. They became it, through suffering, clarity, and relentless belief. And so can you. But first, you must learn to see again, not with your eyes, but with the burning center of your being. You must unlearn the noise, tear off the masks, and stare directly into the sacred discomfort of your potential. Because the truth is this: your comfort is the enemy. Your doubt is a lie dressed in logic. And your destiny? It's not something you find, it's something you forge. The alchemists of old believed that within every base metal lived the soul of gold, just waiting to be released by fire. You are the same. This world may have labeled you common, average, disposable, but labels don't define matter. Fire does. So burn. Not to destroy, but to become. The mind is the forge. The world wants your attention. It will scream for it, seduce it, poison it, trap it. But what it can never take, unless you give it away, is your will. That is where it begins, the mind. Not the mind of textbooks and trivia, but the crucible of identity, belief, and possibility. That quiet place where you decide, again and again, who you are when no one's watching. Because every revolution begins there. Before the first wheel turned, a mind envisioned movement. Before the first rocket flew, a mind defied gravity. Before the first empire rose, a mind refused to remain small. And yet here you are, doubting yourself because the world conditioned you to think in straight lines when your soul dreams in galaxies. The supernatural doesn't begin in the hands. It begins in the mind that commands them. But a powerful mind is not born, it is built. It is sharpened by discipline, shaped by adversity, and clarified by silence. Lincoln once said, "Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe." Your mind is your axe. And most swing dull, tired, distracted. Is it any wonder they break? This is your call to sharpen. Your thoughts are not harmless. They are the architects of your reality. Feed them fear, and they will build you a prison. Feed them truth, and they will build you wings. But you must decide. Do you feed the wolf of doubt, or the lion of becoming? Belief is the catalyst. There comes a moment, a single breath, when belief ignites. And when it does, you can feel it in your bones. The moment you stop asking for permission, and start claiming your power. This isn't about arrogance. This is about alignment. Because when you truly believe in who you are becoming, the universe moves. Not magically. Not conveniently. But inevitably. People forget this truth. Belief is not passive. It is not hope. It is the sword you draw when life backs you into a corner. It is the flame you protect in the darkest nights of your journey. It is the seed that breaks stone because it refuses to remain buried. Disney was fired for lacking imagination. Ford was told horses were forever. Wright brothers were mocked for dreaming of flight. And yet, here you are living in the world their belief built. Don't you see? Belief doesn't make things easy. It makes them possible. But only if you're willing to hold it when everything else falls apart. Only if you're willing to scream it into the void until the echo answers back. Only if you're willing to become the very thing you were told you could never be. You are not waiting for a sign. You are the sign. Clarity cuts through chaos. In the fog of modern life, clarity is rebellion. We are drowning in information but starving for direction. Scrolling, searching, swiping, but going nowhere. Clarity is not knowing every step. It is knowing the next one. It is waking up and deciding, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is where I'm going. Even if the rest of the world is confused, there's a reason the greatest generals, inventors, artists, and leaders all had a singular vision. Clarity was their compass. They didn't need a map, they became the map. When Alexander stood at the edge of the known world, he didn't see a border. He saw an invitation. When Jobs held that sleek rectangle in his hand, he didn't see a phone. He saw a revolution. When Oprah spoke, she didn't just speak, she transmitted conviction, because she knew exactly why her voice mattered. You must learn to see beyond the blur. Because until you know who you are, the world will sell you its version of yourself. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your entire life climbing a ladder, only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. Clarity is not found. Clarity is earned, in solitude, in stillness, and in choosing to walk your path even when it is unlit. And the moment you get clear, the world will react. Some will fear you. Some will doubt you. But the real ones? They'll feel you. Because clarity, real clarity, doesn't whisper, it roars. Vision is the language of the soul. A man without vision is a leaf in the wind, tossed, turned, broken by forces he cannot see. But a man with vision? He becomes the wind. Vision is not fantasy. It is the heartbeat of destiny. It's what allowed Mandela to survive prison. It's what pulled Helen Keller from darkness into a world of light. It's what drove Musk to bet everything on an impossible dream. You must see it before you build it. You must feel it before you hold it. Close your eyes, not to escape the world, but to create one. A world where your highest self lives. Where your power is fully expressed. Where your voice matters, your work matters, your life matters. Do not wait for the vision to come. Command it. Chapter 2, The War of Discipline. There is a silent war happening every single day, and most never even realize they're on the battlefield. It is not a war fought with bombs or bullets, not one with armies or flags, but something much more subtle and far more dangerous. It is a war between who you are and who you could be. Between the comfort of your current self and the discomfort of your future greatness. Between your excuses and your execution. This war doesn't take place in the streets. It takes place in your decisions, in your habits, in the invisible corners of your daily life where no one is watching but everything is being decided. Discipline is the battlefield of the supernatural. It is where the divine meets the mundane. Where lofty visions are beaten into reality by the hammer of daily choices. Everyone wants greatness when it's abstract, when it's romanticized, when it's placed on a stage or cast in golden light. But discipline is not glamorous. It is not loud. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It whispers at 4:45 a.m. when the alarm goes off. It whispers when no one is clapping. When the room is empty. When the reward is invisible and the resistance is overwhelming. Discipline is forged in the hours the world ignores. And yet, this is the paradox of power. The more extraordinary the goal, the more ordinary the actions required to reach it. Every empire you admire, every icon you praise, every genius you quote, they were not born with crowns or wings. They were forged in monotony. They became what they became because they mastered the art of doing what needed to be done, especially when they didn't feel like it. Think of Thomas Edison. People remember the light bulb, but few remember the 10,000 failed experiments. They remember the moment the world lit up, not the years of ridicule, exhaustion, and quiet obsession that preceded it. Think of Henry Ford, not the mass production, but the mind that saw order where others saw chaos, the man who repeated the process until it bent to his will. Think of Michael Jordan in the gym after practice, repeating shots until his muscles became memory, until his body no longer needed permission from his mind to perform. These people weren't motivated every day. They were disciplined. Motivation is fleeting. It is emotional. It is based on how you feel. Discipline is different. Discipline is a decision you make over and over, even when your feelings scream otherwise. Discipline is what carries you when your confidence disappears, when your motivation fades, when the fire goes out and all that's left is smoke and ashes. And the truth is, your life is already ruled by discipline, whether you recognize it or not. If you're not disciplined about your growth, then you're disciplined in your stagnation. If you're not disciplined in your pursuit, you're disciplined in your distraction. Everyone is consistent at something. The question is whether that consistency builds you or breaks you. You don't get to avoid the law of discipline. You only get to choose its direction. Every time you delay action, every time you say, tomorrow, every time you hide behind perfectionism or fear or fatigue, you feed the part of yourself that wants you small. That part of you isn't evil, it's afraid. It's afraid of pain. Afraid of change. Afraid of becoming so powerful that you no longer recognize yourself. But that fear, if left unchecked, will quietly run your life. It will sabotage your goals not with loud failures, but with slow decay. With, I'll start next week. With, it's not the right time. With, I'm just not ready yet. But you are. You always were. The only thing missing was your decision to become dangerous. There's a reason the Spartans trained until pain was pleasure. There's a reason samurai bowed to discipline as a sacred code. It wasn't because they loved suffering. It was because they understood that greatness doesn't arrive. It is summoned. Through repetition. Through sacrifice. Through the slow death of your weaker self. That is discipline. It is the controlled burning of your mediocrity, one unexcused day at a time. And in a world addicted to convenience, the disciplines stand out. They move different. Speak different. Think different. Because they know that every shortcut has a cost, and every comfort comes with a cage. There is no easy version of excellence. There is no hack for transcendence. The supernatural is not gifted, it is built. One hard choice at a time. But don't confuse discipline with punishment. Discipline is not about self-denial. It's about self-respect. It's about building a life that reflects who you truly are, not who the world has trained you to be. Discipline is love in action. It is how you show up for your dreams when they're inconvenient, when they hurt, when no one else believes in them but you. And that's where real power lives, in the moments no one sees. So when you feel tired, good. That means you're stretching beyond the old you. When it feels boring, perfect. That means you're mastering repetition. When no one claps, even better. That means it's real. Because the results are inevitable. If you do the work, day after day, with relentless commitment, the world will bend. Not because of luck, not because of fate, but because of your refusal to be average. Look at the military mind. Look at the monk's mind. Look at the artist who paints for hours without applause. All of them have one thing in common: they don't wait to feel like it. They decide. They act. They stay loyal to a future only they can see. Your life is being sculpted right now by your smallest decisions. Not your dreams, not your goals, but your routines, your rituals, your disciplines. These are the bricks of your legacy. And here's the part they never tell you. The moment you commit to discipline, not once, but as a lifestyle, you begin to feel something deeper than motivation. You begin to feel aligned, anchored. You begin to realize that every sacrifice made was an act of liberation, every rep was a revolution, every early morning was a declaration of self-respect. So wake up, train, refine, rest, but do not retreat. Because while the world sleeps, the supernatural rise, not in flashes of glory, but in hours of discipline no one will ever see. Chapter 3. the fire of purpose. There comes a moment in every human life, sometimes early, sometimes late, when the question stops being, "How do I survive?" and becomes, "Why am I really here?" And that question, more than any other, has the power to shake a soul awake. Because purpose is not a luxury. It is not something you casually stumble upon or receive as a gift from the sky. Purpose is what separates those who are merely alive from those who are truly awake. It is the difference between movement and meaning, between existence and impact, between running in circles and walking a path that leads somewhere. The tragedy is not that people fail. The real tragedy is that people succeed in things that don't matter. They climb ladders leaning against walls that were never theirs to begin with. They chase dreams that were planted by marketing, media, or fear, only to wake up decades later realizing they built a life that looks impressive on the outside but feels hollow on the inside. That is the slow death of the soul. Comfort without fulfillment, achievement without alignment, motion without meaning. And the only cure for that sickness is purpose. Not goals. Not applause. Not status. Purpose. Purpose doesn't always come with lightning bolts. It doesn't always arrive with clarity or fanfare. Sometimes it begins as a whisper, a tug in the gut, a quiet dissatisfaction with mediocrity. It's the subtle pain you feel when you're doing something you know you weren't built for. It's the deep restlessness you carry when your time is being spent surviving a life that never belonged to you. Purpose is often born in discomfort. Because it's not there to keep you safe, it's there to set you on fire. When Martin Luther King Jr. stood behind the podium and said, "I have a dream," it wasn't a slogan. It was the overflow of a man possessed by purpose. When Amelia Earhart took flight into a world that told her she didn't belong in the sky, it wasn't rebellion, it was purpose. When Steve Jobs stood on a stage and told the world to think different, he wasn't selling computers, he was building a culture around purpose. You cannot borrow this kind of fire. You cannot fake it. Purpose is earned in solitude. It is uncovered through reflection, suffering, honesty, and the brutal courage to ask yourself the questions most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Who am I really? What am I here to give? What would I still do if I knew no one would ever clap? And when the answer comes, if it comes, you will know it. Not because it sounds beautiful, but because it costs you something. Because real purpose doesn't come to entertain your ego. It comes to dismantle it. It comes to strip away your false identities, your lazy narratives, your limiting stories. It doesn't want the mask you wear to be accepted. It wants the core of who you are, the raw, unfiltered, unpolished you. And when that version of you begins to act from a place of purpose, you stop performing and start transforming. The truth is, most people are not tired because they're doing too much. They're tired because they're doing too little of what makes them feel alive. They are drained not from the volume of their responsibilities, but from the absence of meaning in what they do. You can spend 12 hours doing something that lights you up and feel more energy at the end than when you started. That is the power of aligned purpose. It doesn't deplete you, it fuels you. It doesn't ask for your time, it asks for your soul. But in return, it gives you something far more valuable than money, praise, or success. It gives you peace. A deep, unshakable knowing that your life is being spent well. And yes, it will require sacrifice. Purpose will demand that you trade comfort for conviction. That you walk away from validation, distraction, and even security. But what it gives you in return is the one thing this world cannot counterfeit: significance. The kind of life that matters not just to you, but to those around you. The kind of life that, when it's over, leaves a mark that time cannot erase. Because here's the truth, no one remembers the people who played it safe. No one builds statues for those who followed instructions. No one writes history books about those who avoided risk, avoided rejection, avoided life. The ones who are remembered, the ones who bend reality, the ones who shift culture and unlock human potential. Those people burned with purpose. They didn't ask for guarantees. They didn't wait for the perfect moment. They heard the call and they answered. And you, whoever you are, wherever you are, no matter how far you've drifted, you are still one decision away from that fire. One choice away from meaning. One honest conversation away from direction. But you must be willing to go where most refuse to go, inward. You must be willing to disappoint the world if it means being true to yourself. You must be willing to risk success in someone else's story for the chance to write your own. Purpose doesn't eliminate pain. It redefines it. It gives your suffering a shape, your struggle a reason, your fear a direction. Pain without purpose breaks people. Pain with purpose builds them. It turns wounds into wisdom. It turns setbacks into fuel. It turns silence into a voice that cannot be ignored. So stop waiting for permission. Stop chasing artificial rewards. Stop trying to fit into a system that profits from your confusion. You were not born to blend in. You were not designed to conform. There is something in you that the world needs, even if it hasn't asked for it yet. There is a role only you can play, a problem only you can solve, a path only you can walk. And yes, it will be hard. Yes, it will be lonely. Yes, it will stretch every part of who you are. But it will also free you. It will reveal you. It will take everything false and burn it away until only what is real remains. Purpose is not an accessory. It is not something you find when life slows down or you retire or you finally have time. Purpose is oxygen. You either breathe it or you suffocate in silence. You either live it or you slowly die with your potential still locked inside you. So ask the questions. Sit in the silence. Let the discomfort speak. And when you hear the answer, don't run. Don't delay. Don't wait for clarity to become convenient. Say yes. Fully. Boldly. Irrevocably. Because when you align your life with purpose, you don't just change your world. You begin to change the world. Chapter 4. The Relentless Power of Action. There is a threshold between thought and reality, a narrow gate that separates the dreamers from the builders, the hopeful from the impactful, the ones who talk about what could be from the ones who rise and create it. That threshold is not talent. It is not luck. It is not even belief. It is action. Ruthless, consistent, sometimes imperfect, often uncomfortable, but always decisive action. In a world drowning in ideas, flooded with opinions, and paralyzed by overthinking, action has become one of the rarest and most powerful currencies of transformation. It is the force that turns intentions into outcomes. It is what turns potential into legacy. And the truth most people cannot bear to admit is that they are not stuck because they don't know what to do. They are stuck because they refuse to move. We have become a species that confuses motion with momentum, that confuses planning with progress, that confuses consuming content with creating change. We analyze. We overthink. We wait for signs, for stars to align, for motivation to return, for the fear to go away. But life does not reward the hesitant. The universe does not respond to those who wait. It moves for those who move. For those who take a single step into uncertainty, again and again, without the guarantee of success, without the illusion of safety, without the luxury of certainty. There is something profoundly supernatural about action because action cuts through noise. It shatters the paralysis of analysis. It breaks the spell of perfectionism. It silences the inner critic. It defies the gravity of doubt. Because while your mind spins stories, action creates facts. While your fears predict disaster, action reveals truth. And the truth is rarely as terrifying as your imagination made it out to be. The truth is that you are far more capable than you've allowed yourself to believe, but you'll never feel that truth until you act on it. Look at every figure who has ever reshaped reality, every innovator, every leader, every disruptor, every creator. They all had doubts. They all felt fear. They all faced resistance. The difference is they moved anyway. Rosa Parks didn't need certainty to refuse her seat. Neil Armstrong didn't need comfort to take that first step on the moon. Elon Musk didn't need a guarantee before he risked everything on an idea that sounded insane. These individuals weren't fearless. They were movers. They acted in spite of fear. They stepped forward when logic said to wait. And by doing so, they entered the rare air of those who no longer wonder what could be, because they are busy building what will be. The harsh truth is that your future is not waiting for your approval. It is waiting for your execution. The version of you that you imagine, the life you claim to desire, the results you write down in journals or speak about in hopeful conversations, they do not belong to the you who waits, who plans endlessly, who hesitates. They belong to the you who does, who dares, who shows up when it's hard, who acts when it's inconvenient, who moves when the fear is loudest. Because every action you take is a vote for the person you are becoming. And every time you hesitate, delay, or retreat, you vote for the version of you that stays behind, trapped in safety, slowly suffocating under the weight of untapped potential. The world has taught us to worship outcomes, to chase results, to obsess over performance, metrics, and speed. But the real miracle of action is not in what it gets you, it's in who it makes you. Every day you choose to act, you are sculpting a new identity. Not with words, not with wishes, but with behavior. And identity built on action is unshakable. It is grounded. It is real. Because it is forged in the fire of proof, of repetition, of deliberate movement forward even when progress is invisible. That is why you must learn to act before you feel ready, before the fear goes away, before the plan is perfect. Because you will never think your way into the life you want. You will only act your way there. The door is not locked. There is no gatekeeper. There is no secret password. There is only movement. After step, after step. And yes, you will fall. You will fail. You will mess up. But those who live supernatural lives are not those who avoid failure. They are those who use it, who study it, who stand back up with more precision, more wisdom, more strength. The pain of action pales in comparison to the agony of regret. One bruise from movement is better than 1,000 scars from waiting. Because at least movement gives you feedback. Waiting only gives you fantasies, and fantasies don't build anything. You don't need to know all the answers. You don't need to have everything mapped out. What you need is motion. Consistent, deliberate, bold action. And the more you do it, the more you realize that the fear doesn't go away, you just learn to act with it. You learn to walk with the tremble in your voice, the pounding in your chest, the chaos in your mind, because you've learned something most never will, that your feelings are not facts, and your thoughts are not final. That beneath all the noise, there is still a will, a force, that can move. So build. Speak. Apply. Wake up and make the call. Take the shot. Do the reps. Write the page. Record the message. Say the truth. Initiate the change. Whatever the action is, take it. Not tomorrow. Not when it's easier. Not when you feel confident. Because the world is shaped not by those who think the most, it is shaped by those who move first. And when you begin to move like that, you will feel something change, not in the world, but in yourself. You'll feel a deep, cellular level shift. You'll begin to trust yourself again. You'll feel the gap close between who you are and who you could be. And that gap, that alignment, that is where the supernatural lives. Not in magic, not in mystery, but in movement. So if you hear this message and something in you stirs, don't just nod. Don't just agree. Don't just think. Because every second you wait, your dreams sink further into the mud of maybe someday. But every action, no matter how small, pulls them closer into the gravity of now. Chapter 5. Mastering Adaptability. The world will never stop changing. Seasons will turn. Markets will shift. People will come and go. What worked yesterday may betray you tomorrow. What made you feel strong one year may be the very thing that limits you the next. And in that ever-changing terrain, there is one truth most people never accept because it shatters their illusion of control. The world does not care how comfortable you were with the way things used to be. It cares only about how well you can adapt to the way things are becoming. Adaptability is not weakness. It is not compromise. It is not indecision. True adaptability is an aggressive, conscious skill. The ability to evolve faster than your circumstances. It is the choice to remain fluid when the rigid break. It is the mind that moves like water, shaping itself to the container of the moment, while never losing its depth, its weight, its direction. It is the refusal to let changing conditions derail a fixed commitment. And in that, adaptability becomes a form of resilience so powerful, it can make the impossible inevitable. People often think power means control. But the deepest power comes from being able to remain yourself while adjusting everything else. Adaptability doesn't mean you abandon your vision, It means you're willing to change the route without ever questioning the destination. You don't need the path to stay the same. You need the mission to stay alive. Think of the greatest innovators, leaders, and warriors this world has known. Not one of them succeeded because they stuck to the original plan without deviation. They succeeded because when the storm hit, they moved with it. When the map no longer made sense, they trusted their internal compass. When the rules changed, they adapted faster than anyone else and rewrote the game in real time. Napoleon didn't conquer by following predictable strategies. He adapted with ferocity and speed, often outmaneuvering armies far larger than his own. Bruce Lee became a legend not because of one martial art, but because he became the philosophy of adaptation itself, discarding what didn't serve him, absorbing what did, creating something new every time reality demanded it. Adaptability is intelligence in motion. It is the rejection of victimhood. It is how you turn setbacks into strategy. It is what allows you to learn from pain instead of being defined by it. Because the truth is, most people don't fail from lack of ability, they fail because they refuse to change. They cling to outdated identities. They defend old beliefs. They stay loyal to processes that no longer serve them. And then they wonder why their life feels stuck, why progress feels impossible, why their goals remain just out of reach. The answer is brutal but simple. Evolution punishes stagnation. If you want to become supernatural, you must kill the fantasy that the path will be linear. You must surrender the illusion of control. You must abandon the need for consistency in your environment and replace it with a relentless consistency in your character. Because the world will test you. It will stretch you. It will break your routines, disrupt your plans, pull the floor out from under your feet. And when it does, you will either collapse into excuses or rise into adaptation. Adaptability is about learning to move without panic, to respond without overreacting, to adjust without losing your power. It is the steady voice in the chaos, the flexible mind that refuses to break, the identity so rooted in growth that change doesn't threaten it, it feeds it. This is not weakness. This is strength at its most dangerous form, the strength to bend without breaking, to learn without ego, to change without losing your fire. We live in a culture that worships the grind, the hustle, the never-quit mentality. But what they rarely tell you is that sometimes strength is not in the refusal to yield. It's in the ability to shift, reposition, reimagine. Stubbornness is not discipline. Resistance is not always power. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to let go of how you thought it would be, of the plan that no longer fits, of the version of you that doesn't belong in the future you're building. Adaptability requires humility. It requires the courage to admit that your way might not be the only way, that your identity is not your destiny, that your past does not dictate your path. But once you accept that, you become unstoppable. Because there is nothing this world can throw at you that you cannot transform. Pain becomes your professor. Change becomes your training ground. Uncertainty becomes your weapon. This is not about becoming a chameleon. This is about becoming anti-fragile. About training your nervous system to remain centered while everything around you is in flux. About developing the ability to shift gears, change pace, absorb feedback, and move forward stronger, not in spite of the change, but because of it. And this requires a daily practice. You must stretch your mind the same way you stretch your muscles. You must learn to seek new angles. You must question assumptions, challenge patterns, and rebuild systems. And most importantly, you must remove the toxic idea that changing course is failure. It's not. Failure is refusing to change when the evidence demands it. Failure is clinging to the familiar while your opportunity dies in the distance. Adaptability doesn't mean you stop being who you are. It means you become who you need to be without losing the essence of your soul. That's the balance. That's the dance. That's what separates those who rise once from those who rise again and again and again, no matter how many times life knocks them sideways. And when you live like that, when you commit to radical, graceful adaptation, you become something more than just a person reacting to life. You become an architect, a strategist, a leader not just of your goals, but of your state of being. And in that space, there is nothing life can take from you. because you've stopped relying on stability from the outside. You've become it from within. This is your evolution. This is how the supernatural rise. Not because they had it all figured out, but because they figured it out on the way. They listened. They adjusted. They kept moving. And in the end, they didn't just survive the storm, they became the storm. Chapter 6. Resilience, becoming unbreakable from within. There are storms in this life that do not ask for your permission before they arrive. They do not knock politely, they do not send warnings, and they are never concerned with your timing or your plans. They come fast, sometimes without sound, and they shake everything you thought was solid. Betrayal, failure, collapse. And when those storms come, and they always do, you will be faced with a decision far more important than anything you've ever studied, posted, or imagined. Will this break you, or will it build you? Will you retreat into pieces, or will you forge yourself into something harder, stronger, and wiser than before? Resilience is not about pretending you're unaffected. It's not a smile plastered over pain, not the forced optimism of those afraid to feel. Resilience is brutal honesty, married to an unshakable refusal to stay down. It is the decision to feel the pain fully, without flinching, and still rise anyway. It is not clean, not polished, not photogenic. It is dirty. It is heavy. It is bloody-knuckled, soul-exhausting, truth-facing strength that is earned, not inherited. Resilience is what remains when your motivation burns out, when your belief flickers, when your discipline stumbles. It's what you find when you hit the floor and realize that you are still here. You see, most people misunderstand strength. They think it's about power, speed, domination. But real strength, true supernatural strength, is the ability to withstand and still move forward. It's forged in loss, in pressure, in disappointment. It's built slowly, day by day, in the choices you make after everything has gone wrong. Resilience is not what you build when life is going your way, it's what you discover when it absolutely is not. Look at every person you admire, the true greats, the ones who didn't just succeed, but changed the game forever, and you will find this quality behind their eyes. Not comfort, not ease, not entitlement, but resilience. Nelson Mandela didn't become a global symbol of dignity and justice because his life was easy. He became that symbol because 27 years behind bars could not touch his soul. Helen Keller didn't become a pioneer because she was given an advantage. She became one because being blind and deaf as a child didn't stop her from igniting minds and rewriting the world's expectations. Resilience is not rare. It is in every single one of us, but it must be activated, tested, and claimed. To become resilient, you must learn to reinterpret pain. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is the process. It is the tuition you pay to master your own mind. Pain is feedback from the universe, revealing where your character is still under construction. It is not asking you to collapse. It is asking you to listen. Because buried inside every setback is a blueprint, every breakdown hides a lesson, and every wound you survive becomes part of your new armor. Not the kind that hardens you and makes you cold, but the kind that makes you invincible. Because once you've been broken and refused to stay broken, there is nothing left to fear. The world will not become easier. People will not become kinder. Challenges will not soften to accommodate your feelings. And if you wait for things to be easier, you will be waiting forever. The only thing that can change, must change, is you. Not the external events, but your response. Not the storm, but your stillness inside it. You don't need guarantees. You don't need to know how it ends. You just need to decide, I will not be broken by this. I will not be reduced. I will rise, no matter how many times I fall. And every time I rise stronger. This is not about being the toughest in the room. This is about becoming someone who cannot be moved, someone whose identity is not built on external approval or temporary success, but on the inner knowing that they have survived too much, learned too much, and refused too many exits to ever give up now. You build that by doing hard things on purpose, by choosing discomfort, by walking directly into the fire that others run from, not recklessly, not to prove anything, but because you know what's on the other side of the fire is freedom. Resilience makes you dangerous. Because a resilient person is not afraid of failure. not afraid of rejection, not afraid of starting over or walking alone or being misunderstood. They don't seek permission. They don't need backup, because they've already been through hell, and they kept walking. And once you've survived enough storms, you stop waiting for calm seas. You become the calm. You stop being reactive, emotional, fragile. You start becoming grounded, decisive, and untouchable. That's what resilience gives you. Not immunity from pain, but immunity from defeat. So if you're in the fire now, if life is unraveling, if nothing seems to be going the way you planned, good. That means you're being forged. That means your old identity is dying, and something stronger is trying to emerge. Do not rush the process. Do not skip the pain. Do not hide from the lesson. Lean in. Pay attention. Let the pressure show you who you are. Because once you get through it, not around it, not above it, but through it, you'll carry something inside you that the world cannot touch. The knowledge that no matter what happens next, you have already survived worse. And you did not come this far to stop now. You will be tested again. Life will press you. But every time it does, it will find you ready. Stronger. Smarter. Wiser. Tighter, maybe. Sharper, certainly. Because now you've been broken. And now you've rebuilt yourself. And nothing is more dangerous than a human being who has nothing to prove and everything to give, because they've been through the fire, and they did not burn. They forged themselves into steel. Chapter 7. The Inner Laboratory of Learning and Mastery. Every person you admire, every mind that shaped the course of humanity, every soul whose work transcended time, began as an amateur. Awkward. Unknown. Uncertain. What separated them from the forgotten billions who remained trapped in mediocrity was not access to better information, not a higher IQ, not some divine genetic gift. It was their relationship with learning. They didn't just acquire knowledge, they became students of life. Ruthless students. Obsessive students. Relentless in their curiosity, disciplined in their refinement, fanatical in their commitment to mastery. Because they understood something this world has largely forgotten, that true power is not in having knowledge, but in becoming the kind of person who never stops evolving. Learning is not about collecting facts. It is about transforming your identity. You do not learn in order to appear smart. You learn in order to become capable. In order to see the world with new eyes. In order to break patterns that no longer serve you. In order to stop being ruled by the primitive fears you inherited and start building a life guided by deliberate design. Learning is evolution, and evolution is the central law of the universe. Everything that resists it dies. Slowly. Quietly. Without dignity. We are not here to memorize, we are here to remake. And that is why every ordinary person has the ability to become supernatural. Because learning is not limited to the privileged, or the elite, or the lucky. Learning is accessible to anyone who is willing to admit they do not yet know, and humble enough to change. But here's the catch, the ego hates this. The ego despises the idea of not knowing. It will convince you that you've heard enough, seen enough, grown enough. It will weaponize pride. It will whisper lies like, this doesn't apply to you, or, you're already past this, or, you're too old, too far behind, too set in your ways. But the truth? The truth is that your brain is still plastic. Your soul is still pliable. Your character is still under construction. The only thing stopping you from reinventing yourself is the refusal to enter the fire of unlearning. Because real learning always begins with unlearning. With stripping away the false narratives, the inherited limitations, the assumptions that were never true to begin with. You were not born afraid. You were not born average. You were not born lazy or broken. Those things were learned, and so they can be unlearned. But only if you are willing to get uncomfortable. To sit in the unfamiliar. To be the beginner again. Because mastery is not the end of learning. It is the deepening of it. The masters in any field are not the ones who learn the fastest. They are the ones who stayed the longest. They are the ones who were willing to practice the fundamentals long after others got bored. They are the ones who didn't care about applause, about validation, about being seen. They cared about precision. Truth. They studied angles others ignored. They questioned things most people accepted. They repeated what others abandoned. Because they understood that repetition is not redundancy, it is refinement. That greatness doesn't come from knowing more, but from understanding deeper. Leonardo da Vinci spent years dissecting corpses, sketching muscles, refining light and shadow, not because he had to, but because mastery demanded it. Beethoven lost his hearing, yet wrote symphonies by feeling the vibration of sound in his bones, because mastery is not deterred by inconvenience. Kobe Bryant would arrive at the gym hours before his team to practice the same shot, the same move, the same sequence, over and over, because mastery is not sexy. It is obsession. In this age of endless distraction, real learning is a rebellion. We consume content like addicts, scroll, swipe, click, forget, but we do not absorb. We do not apply. We trade knowledge for entertainment. But the supernatural don't chase dopamine, they chase depth. They understand that wisdom is not found in the noise of 100 opinions, but in the focused study of one universal principle at a time. And they live by one code: learn deeply, apply ruthlessly. Because learning without action is illusion. The purpose of study is not accumulation, it is application. You do not learn confidence by reading about it. You learn it by taking the risk. You do not learn resilience in a book. You learn it in the moments you choose to stand up instead of quit. You do not learn leadership from quotes. You learn it when the pressure is unbearable, and you must decide who to become under fire. Life is the real classroom. Pain is the final exam. And your ability to translate information into transformation is the only metric that matters. So you must build your own laboratory. A daily practice of testing, experimenting, adjusting. Whether it's writing, building, designing, speaking, selling, teaching, whatever your craft is, you must become obsessed with it. Not because the world demands it, but because your soul does. Because inside every human being is the urge to expand. And that expansion only happens through effort, through risk, through humility, through practice so deep, so focused, so honest, that it begins to change who you are. This is what mastery gives you. Not status, not control, not perfection, but freedom. The freedom to operate at the highest level without fear. The freedom to trust yourself in the chaos. The freedom to step into any room, face any problem, speak any truth, because you know you've earned the right to be there. And that freedom, that confidence, that embodied intelligence, it cannot be faked. It cannot be bought. It cannot be downloaded. It can only be earned. With time. With effort. With years of invisible labor. The kind of labor most people will never see, will never applaud, will never even understand. But you will understand. Because the real ones always do. They nod quietly without speaking when they recognize the look in your eye. The look of someone who knows, because they've been in the lab. They've paid the price. And they're still learning. You were not born to drift through this life hoping for wisdom. You were built to pursue it. You were built to extract it. You were built to become it. So stop waiting to feel ready. Stop pretending you need more credentials. Stop hiding behind the mask of good enough. Start learning like your life depends on it, because it does. And every page, every rep, every risk you take to grow will not just change what you know, it will change who you are. Chapter 8. Clarity, Focus, and the War Against Distraction. There is a battle being fought every minute of your life, and you may not even be aware of it. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look like violence, but it is one of the most dangerous and destructive wars you will ever fight, because it happens not around you, but inside you. It is the war for your attention, for your focus, for the clarity of your mind. It is a silent war, disguised as convenience. It lives in the vibration of your phone, the endless scroll of your feed, the ping of messages you never asked for, the constant flood of information that demands you respond, react, engage, even when none of it actually matters. And every time you give in, every time you allow your attention to be stolen, scattered, or diluted, you are giving away something far more precious than time. You are giving away your life force. Because the greatest danger of distraction is not that you waste hours. It's that you become someone who cannot go deep. Someone who lives on the surface of their own life, skimming across shallow waters, never touching the depth of their own genius. Someone who mistakes movement for progress, busyness for purpose, stimulus for significance. In a world engineered to keep you reactive, addicted, fragmented, you must choose to become dangerously focused. You must declare war against everything that dilutes your mind. Because clarity is not something you stumble into. It is something you fight for. It is something you protect. The most powerful people in history were not those who did the most things. They were those who knew what not to do. They were those who had the courage to say no, not just to distractions, but to good things that did not serve the great thing. They lived with ruthless clarity. They weren't confused about their mission. They didn't chase 100 possibilities. They narrowed their attention like a blade and cut through the chaos. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while writing Stoic meditations because his mind was not bloated with noise. It was sharp with intention. Nikola Tesla worked in near isolation for years, not because he hated people, but because he knew that invention could not happen in a distracted mind. It wasn't that they had more time than you, it's that they refused to waste it. In this era, distraction is the real pandemic. It infects your mind with comparison, with mental fatigue, with fractured attention spans. It turns every moment into an opportunity to be pulled away from what actually matters. And when that happens enough, you forget what focus even feels like. You forget what it's like to sit with one task, one thought, one emotion, without escape. You lose your clarity. And without clarity, you become susceptible to every voice except your own. Clarity is not about knowing the entire plan. It's about knowing what this moment is for. It's about removing the 1,000 things pulling you sideways so you can move forward. It is the rarest form of intelligence, because it requires stillness in a world of movement, restraint in a culture of excess, and commitment in an age of constant options. You cannot become exceptional if your attention is scattered across 10 apps, 50 opinions, and a brain that never experiences quiet. You must reclaim your focus like your life depends on it, because it does. Focus is not about discipline alone. It is about identity. Who do you believe you are? Are you someone who is owned by impulses, by devices, by algorithms? Or are you someone who commands your attention, who owns their hours, who decides how they enter the world? You must train your brain like a warrior. You must fast from noise. You must learn to delay gratification, to tolerate boredom, to sit in silence until your own thoughts become sharp again. Because a sharp mind becomes a sharp weapon, and a sharp weapon can build empires, write revolutions, craft legacies that outlive lifetimes. But don't be fooled. Clarity is not a one-time achievement. It is a practice. A daily, moment-to-moment ritual of choosing what matters and eliminating what does not. It is not enough to write a vision statement once. You must return to it again and again until it's engraved in your bones. Until you know without hesitation what to say yes to and what to say no to without apology. Because every yes to distraction is a no to your destiny. And your destiny cannot afford your divided mind. You don't need more hours. You need fewer leaks. Fewer fractured moments. Fewer dopamine hits disguised as progress. The people who create real impact don't work 20 times harder. They work 20 times deeper. They build systems to protect their focus. They guard their mornings. They simplify their priorities. They slow down to go faster. And because of that, they live with a kind of peace and potency that the scattered will never understand. Clarity is power, not because it makes everything easy, but because it removes the fog that causes most people to waste decades walking in circles. With clarity, you don't need motivation. You don't need tricks or hacks. You just know. And when you know, your actions become automatic. You are no longer debating whether to do the work, you've already decided. The path is clear. The distractions are seen for what they are, empty noise. And your focus becomes sacred. You cannot become supernatural with a distracted mind. The extraordinary do not rise by accident. They rise because they protect the source. The source of all creativity, all execution, all presence, is focus. And the path to that focus is clarity. Not clarity given to you by someone else. Clarity that you earn. Clarity that you mine from stillness, from solitude, from ruthless honesty about what matters most. And when you find that kind of clarity, you begin to move like someone who cannot be stopped. Because you're no longer reacting to life, you're creating it. So simplify. Cut the noise. Audit your attention. Remove the clutter from your digital world, your physical space, your mental landscape. Start building days that serve your mission, not your insecurity. Start choosing depth over distraction. Start living like your mind is sacred. Because when your attention is whole again, when your focus becomes a weapon, when your clarity becomes non-negotiable, you won't just make progress. You will make history. Chapter 9. The Code of Inner Integrity, Living in Alignment with What You Say You Want. There is a fracture that exists in most lives, and though it is invisible to the eye, you can feel it. You can feel it in your anxiety. You can feel it in your fatigue. You can feel it in the quiet guilt that follows you from room to room, in the deep, unspoken knowing that somewhere along the way, you made peace with a life that does not reflect who you really are. That fracture is not caused by failure or by external chaos. It's caused by a misalignment between your values and your behavior, between what you say matters and how you actually show up. That fracture is called a lack of inner integrity, and until you repair it, no amount of success, applause, money, or visibility will ever bring peace. Inner integrity is not about being perfect. It is about being honest. It is the lifelong discipline of aligning your decisions with your truth, your actions with your highest standards, your public life with your private self. It is not glamorous. It is not easy. But it is essential, because without it, you become hollow. You become performative. You become successful on the outside and self-destructive on the inside. The world might praise you, but you will look in the mirror and know you're a fraud, not because you lack talent, but because you abandoned the truth of who you are in exchange for what was convenient. The most powerful force in your life is not motivation. It is not strategy. It is not even discipline. It is alignment. When your words, actions, values, and mission are all moving in the same direction, you become unstoppable. Not because the path is easy, but because your energy is no longer divided. Your spirit no longer negotiates with your weakness. Your will is no longer undermined by your own contradictions. Alignment creates velocity. It creates inner peace. It creates the kind of power that cannot be replicated with hacks, shortcuts, or image management. But here's the part that most will never face. Integrity begins in the smallest moments. It's not tested on the stage, but in the shadows. Not in the declaration, but in the follow-through. It lives in the choice to keep your word when no one is watching. To honor your schedule when you're tired. To speak the truth even when it costs you comfort. To choose the hard thing because it's right, not because it's popular. These choices don't make headlines. They don't win applause. But they build something far more valuable, self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of every supernatural life. The reason most people never feel peace is not because they haven't achieved enough. It's because they have betrayed themselves too many times. They said they would wake up early, but they didn't. They said they would stop chasing toxic relationships, but they went back. They said they would finish the project, start the business, tell the truth, and they broke the promise. Again and again. And with every broken promise, they reinforced a dangerous belief that their word means nothing, that they are not trustworthy, not to others, but to themselves. And when you stop trusting yourself, your confidence is gone. Your clarity is gone. Your power is gone. You don't need external discipline, you need inner integrity. Inner integrity is the quiet strength to be who you say you are, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because it will be. Life will test your alignment. It will offer you shortcuts. It will hand you opportunities that look golden but require you to betray your values. And in those moments, the world will not know what you've done, but you will. And that's all that matters. Because your life is built not on what people think of you, but on what you think of yourself. And if you lie to the world, you lose its trust. But if you lie to yourself, you lose your soul. The greats were not perfect, but they were aligned. They lived by a code. They knew who they were and what they would not compromise. They were willing to suffer loss on the outside to protect truth on the inside. They didn't bend when it got uncomfortable. They didn't rewrite their standards to fit the moment. They rose to meet their values, even when it cost them everything. That's why we remember them. Not because they were always right, but because they were real. You want power? Stop lying to yourself. Stop saying you want something, then building a life that contradicts it. Stop claiming to value health, then abusing your body. Stop saying you want love, then settling for attention. Stop pretending you're committed when you haven't followed through on anything you said you would do. That gap, that integrity gap, is where all your pain lives. And when you close that gap even a little, your entire life begins to shift. You feel stronger, sharper, calmer, more alive. Because there is no greater high than being fully aligned with your own truth. But make no mistake, living with inner integrity will cost you. It will cost you comfort. It will cost you popularity. It will cost you people who preferred the version of you that stayed small, agreeable, and confused. But what you gain in return is priceless. You gain a spine. You gain peace. You gain the ability to look in the mirror and respect who you see. And once you have that, no one can take it from you. You don't need to be extraordinary in the eyes of the world. You need to be authentic in the eyes of your soul. Because that's where your real life is lived. Not in the metrics, not in the validation, not in the perception, but in the quiet spaces where only you know whether or not you're walking your path or betraying it. So start there. In the small promises. In the daily choices. In the uncomfortable moments where integrity feels like a burden, but actually, it's your liberation. Let your life speak. Let your actions define you. Let your values be visible in how you show up, in what you refuse, in what you pursue. And over time, you won't need to convince anyone of who you are, because you'll be it. And when you are it, everything begins to align. Not perfectly, not without pain, but with power. Real, unshakable, earned power. The kind that only comes from living true. Chapter 10. Energy, Ritual, and the Architecture of an Unstoppable Life. There are people who walk into a room and shift the entire atmosphere, not because they are louder, richer, or more physically imposing, but because they carry something rare, something impossible to imitate. It's not charisma. It's not force. It's not charm. It's energy. A quiet intensity. A subtle clarity. A gravity that comes not from words, but from a life that is built right. And the truth is, behind that kind of presence is not accident, luck, or hype. It's the daily design of an intentional system. It is the result of rituals, decisions, boundaries, and repeated actions layered so precisely that over time they construct a human being who can no longer be derailed by randomness. Because when you build the architecture of your energy, you stop living in chaos. You start living in command. Most people don't have energy problems. They have system problems. They drag themselves through the day not because they lack potential, but because they wake up reactive, overstimulated, disconnected from purpose, scattered by digital noise, undernourished, overstretched, and completely divorced from the sacred idea that energy is not given, it is created. And it's created by how you live, by what you allow, by what you repeat. The body, the mind, and the soul each have their own batteries. And if you drain them every day without a system to recharge, you will slowly become a version of yourself that is tired, bitter, distracted, and eventually disempowered. And once that disempowerment sets in, everything becomes harder, not because it is, but because you are. You cannot be unstoppable with broken rituals. You cannot live in alignment while burning your fuel on things that do not serve you. You cannot expect to operate at your peak while eating garbage, sleeping irregularly, starting your day with anxiety-triggering screens, tolerating toxic people, and wondering why you can't find your rhythm. That's not a motivation issue. That's not a mindset issue. That's architecture. If the structure of your life is unsound, your foundation will fail, no matter how big your goals are. And that's what most people don't understand. The supernatural are not powered by hype, they are powered by systems. They don't rise because they feel like it. They rise because they built something around them that makes rising inevitable. They don't count on willpower, they rely on ritual. They've taken the guesswork out of greatness. They've designed mornings that protect their clarity, environments that feed their ambition, routines that honor their body, disciplines that fortify their mind. And over time, those habits stop being something they do. They become something they are. You must start treating your life like a high-performance engine. You must audit every input. What you feed your mind matters. What you consume with your eyes matters. What you tolerate in your relationships matters. What you allow into your body, your schedule, your environment, it all matters. Because it all adds up. You don't just wake up exhausted one day. You become that version of yourself after thousands of small, unconscious compromises. But the same is true in reverse. Every moment of discipline, every conscious upgrade, every energy-protecting choice, that too builds up. And eventually, that version of you becomes unshakable. Energy is your currency. Time without energy is useless. Ideas without energy are meaningless. Vision without energy is just hallucination. If you don't have the vitality to execute, your potential is trapped. But when your energy is high, clean, focused, nourished, protected, you become a different species. You start moving through life with velocity, not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. Problems shrink. Resistance fades. People feel your presence. And it's not because you did something dramatic. It's because you stopped draining yourself on the unnecessary. This is where ritual becomes holy. Not in a religious sense, but in the sense that it becomes non-negotiable. You wake up early not for Instagram aesthetics, but because you've tasted the clarity of a mind untouched by noise. You move your body, not for vanity, but because a strong body houses a stable mind. You say no to distractions not to be righteous, but because you've learned that mental fragmentation is the fastest way to spiritual collapse. You protect your evenings because you understand that your nervous system cannot serve you if it's constantly overstimulated. You simplify your inputs because the more things you allow into your mind, the harder it is to hear your own voice. You meditate, breathe, pray, journal, whatever your tools are, because they are the bricks of your inner temple, and you do not allow that structure to collapse for anything. Energy and ritual are how you escape the trap of randomness. Because randomness is what kills momentum. Waking up with no plan, no direction, checking messages before you've even remembered your purpose, consuming news, numbing with entertainment, jumping from app to app to avoid the pain of presence. This is what average looks like. This is how brilliance dies. Not with a catastrophe, but with an erosion of focus, a slow spiritual leak, a subtle resignation that this is just the way it is. But it's not. It never was. You are not a machine. You are not a productivity tool. You are not a slave to hustle culture or an algorithm. You are a force of nature. And like any force of nature, you require rhythm. You require cycles of exertion and restoration. You require space to think, silence to hear, structure to grow. You require respect for your own energy. And the moment you begin treating your energy like it is sacred, the quality of your life begins to reflect it. Your thoughts become sharper. Your emotions more grounded. Your work more precise. Your voice more powerful. You stop leaking time and start living deliberately. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be consistent. You don't need to change everything overnight. You need to start building one ritual at a time, layering it like a foundation, defending it like a fortress, refining it until it becomes effortless. Because once that happens, once your rituals become identity, once your energy is no longer an accident but a design, you will begin to move through life with a new rhythm. Not frantic, not chaotic, but focused, rooted, relentless. That's the architecture of an unstoppable life. Not motivation, maintenance, not hype, habits. Not a performance for others, but a quiet contract with yourself that says, I will no longer live beneath my potential, because I have built a life that brings the best out of me every single day. Chapter 11. The Power of Gratitude and the Rewiring of Reality. There is a level of strength that cannot be earned through willpower alone, that does not come from intensity or ambition or control. It is a strength that does not scream or strive, but radiates from a person who is deeply, quietly awake, someone who has made peace with their path, who sees the world not as something to conquer but as something to receive. That strength is not found in domination, it's found in gratitude. And not the diluted version sold on coffee mugs or turned into passive quotes on social media, but the kind that is visceral, raw, earned. The kind of gratitude that is not a mood but a mindset. Not a moment of positivity, but a fundamental rewiring of how you see. Gratitude at its highest level is not about ignoring difficulty. It's about transcending it. It's about meeting life with such depth of awareness that even your pain becomes a teacher. It is the understanding that your very existence is already a statistical miracle. That the breath you're taking right now, the consciousness you're using to process these words, the opportunity to even have a mind capable of growth, these are things you did not earn, but were gifted. And when you live from that awareness, you stop needing everything to go your way in order to feel powerful. Because your power no longer depends on outcomes. It flows from presence. Most people wait to feel grateful until life gives them a reason. They wait for the breakthrough, for the relief, for the success, for the ease. But the supernatural don't wait. They choose. Because they understand that gratitude is not the result of a good life. It is the foundation of one. It is not reactive, it is generative. It creates momentum. It sharpens perspective. It strips the mind of its illusions and trains you to see clearly. And in a world obsessed with lack, distraction, and self-comparison, the ability to see clearly is a superpower. When you practice gratitude as a way of life, you begin to extract energy from places most people miss. You find meaning in the ordinary. You turn small moments into sources of fuel. You no longer need the extreme high of winning or the constant pursuit of more to feel alive. You start recognizing that you've already survived things you once thought would break you. You see that your current struggles are shaping parts of you that comfort never could. You notice that your past pain gave you language, empathy, and direction. You realize that nothing was wasted. And when you see that, truly see it, you begin to move through life differently. Gratitude isn't about passivity. It's about alignment. It's not saying everything is fine when it isn't. It's saying, I will find the gift inside this moment even if it challenges me. And from that place, your action becomes more precise. Your mind becomes calmer. Your reactions slow down. Your spirit becomes anchored, not because the world is calm, but because you are. You stop reacting to every storm because you found something deeper than external peace. You found internal clarity. And this clarity changes everything. Because when you're grateful, you stop approaching your goals from desperation. You stop moving from scarcity. You stop grasping, forcing, comparing, or proving. You still want more, but you no longer need it to feel whole. You build from a place of sufficiency, not survival. You chase mastery not because you're empty, but because you're called. You pursue impact not because you're trying to matter, but because you already do, and now you want to express it. That shift changes how you think, speak, build, and lead. It moves you from effort to essence. This is why gratitude is not weakness. It's the root of true power. Because when your inner world is anchored in appreciation, the outer world can no longer control your state. You become immune to the chaos of culture. You become selective with what enters your mind. You start choosing your focus deliberately, not emotionally. And your energy stops being drained by imaginary problems. Most stress doesn't come from reality, it comes from resisting it. But gratitude dissolves that resistance. It doesn't make everything easy. It makes everything possible. There is a kind of emotional intelligence that only reveals itself when gratitude is lived, not theorized. It sharpens your awareness of other people. It dissolves entitlement. It replaces complaints with compassion. It gives you the ability to see the silent battles others are fighting. And that vision, that expanded empathy, makes you more dangerous, not less. Because now you can lead, create, build, connect, and influence from a place that is grounded in truth. People feel it. They can't always name it, but they know it. That presence, that depth, that refusal to be rattled, that unshakable quality that only comes from someone who has seen the full spectrum of life and chosen to be thankful anyway. Gratitude is the great integrator. It makes your wisdom usable. It turns pain into perspective. It turns goals into gifts. It makes your story coherent, not because you control every chapter, but because you learn to own every sentence. And the moment you begin to live like that, not occasionally, not when it's easy, but daily, the entire emotional frequency of your life changes. You no longer feel like life is happening to you. You feel like you are happening to life. Because gratitude reconnects you with your power to respond. It reminds you that you are not a victim, you are an agent of transformation. So you stop asking why things happened. You start asking, what can I make from this? You stop resenting the slow process. You start trusting it. You stop rejecting the now. You start partnering with it. And that alignment, that gratitude in real time, builds momentum that cannot be faked. Because you're no longer postponing your joy for a future that hasn't arrived. You are inhabiting your life, moment by moment, with full ownership, full presence, and a clear heart. And from that place, everything becomes lighter. Not because the weight is gone, but because you are stronger. Not because problems disappear, but because you are no longer owned by them. You are no longer defined by what's missing. You are empowered by what's already here. And when you live from that frequency, you move differently. You speak differently. You attract differently. You build from a well that doesn't run dry. This is what it means to rewire reality. Not through force, but through focus. Not through pretending, but through perspective. Gratitude does not ignore pain, it gives it context. It does not erase hardship, it gives it meaning. And that meaning gives you access to a version of yourself that is grounded, awake, and ready for anything. Chapter 12. Destiny is a decision, the final awakening of potential. There comes a point in every life, quiet, invisible, undramatic, where a single decision changes everything. It is not always announced with clarity. It does not come with fanfare or certainty. In fact, most people don't even recognize the moment when it arrives. But it comes. And when it does not ask you what you wish to become. It asks you what you are willing to become. It doesn't care how much potential you have. It doesn't care how gifted you are. It only wants to know one thing. Are you ready to decide? Not to try. Not to hope, but to decide that your destiny is not something you inherit, not something you wait for, not something that arrives when circumstances align, but something you claim and construct, moment by moment, with unshakable resolve. The world will tell you destiny is a mystery, that you need to find it, wait for it, pray that it finds you, that it is written in the stars, etched into fate, out of reach except for the chosen few. But those who rise, those who transcend, those who leave behind fingerprints on history, they know the truth. Destiny is not found. It is forged. It is not written for you, it is written by you. Through your choices. Through your actions. Through your decision to become more than what life has tried to make you. And that decision is not a one-time event. It is not a feeling you ride. It is not a mood. It is a line you draw in the ground of your soul and never cross again. It is the moment you stop living according to default programming, cultural expectations, or inherited limitations. It is the moment you declare, without apology, that your life will no longer be dictated by fear, by fatigue, by mediocrity masquerading as logic. It is the moment you stop negotiating with potential and start executing on it. And from that moment on, everything changes, not because the world gets easier, but because you get serious. To decide is to burn the bridge. To remove the option of returning to who you were. It is not about sudden transformation. It's about total commitment. Commitment to growth. Commitment to truth. Commitment to that higher version of you that has been knocking on the door since the beginning. Most never answer. Most ignore it. They tell themselves, now's not the time, or I'm not ready, or maybe later. But the ones who become supernatural, they answer. Not with words. With movement. They get up. They build. They take the step. They follow the voice even when it leads through fire. Because destiny is not born from conditions. It's born from conviction. And conviction is rare in a world addicted to comfort, allergic to truth, obsessed with convenience. That's why the ones who rise feel like outliers. Because they are. Not because they are better, but because they are more honest. They have stopped lying to themselves. They no longer wait for permission. They no longer outsource their power. They no longer live as spectators in their own story. They are the author now, the architect, the builder, and they accept the full weight of that responsibility, not with fear, but with reverence. To live like that requires more than motivation. It requires a complete psychological and spiritual rewiring. You must recondition your nervous system to act without approval, to move without guarantees, to build without applause. You must teach yourself to lean into resistance, to crave the stretch, to find peace in pressure. Because destiny is built under pressure. And if you wait for things to get easy, if you wait to feel fully ready, you will die with your greatness still inside you. You have to make peace with the wait. You have to choose to carry the mission. Not just when it feels good, but especially when it doesn't. That's what separates potential from legacy. Potential is a theory. Destiny is a decision. A decision that must be made again and again, especially when the voice of doubt grows loud. Especially when the results are invisible. Especially when no one understands you. Because the truth is, destiny is lonely. You will walk ahead of the crowd. You will be misunderstood. You will lose people. But you will find yourself. You will discover that the version of you who can carry this level of purpose, power, and pressure already lives inside you, but he or she has been waiting for one thing: your commitment. You don't need more information. You don't need more time. You don't need another opinion. What you need is to look yourself in the mirror and decide. Decide who you are. Decide what you're about. Decide what you will no longer tolerate. Decide what hill you are willing to die on. Decide what must be built through you regardless of cost. And then you act. You move. You build structure. You train the mind. You cut the noise. You sharpen the message. You rise again and again until your life becomes undeniable, not because of luck, but because of alignment backed by execution over time. And that's where the supernatural is activated. Not in magic, but in clarity. Not in speed, but in staying power. Not in excitement, but in integrity to the path you chose. Because the ones who finish strong are never the most gifted, they are the ones who made the strongest vow. A vow to stop lying to themselves. A vow to follow truth no matter how inconvenient. A vow to live so fully in their calling that there is nothing left to bury. This is not self-help. This is self-honor. This is the work of reclaiming every lost piece of yourself and refusing to let the world shrink you back down to fit the version it prefers. This is the lifelong discipline of becoming who you were always meant to be, and doing it with such clarity and conviction that you begin to lift others just by standing in your truth. You don't force them. You don't convince them. You become the proof. The living evidence that it is possible to live awake, to live strong, to live full. The world doesn't need more people who follow. It needs more people who decide. Because once you decide, truly decide, nothing can stop you. You may bend, but you won't break. You may fall, but you won't stay down. You may get hit, but you'll hit back with something stronger, conviction forged in action. And with each step, each day, each breath, you get closer, not to perfection, but to embodiment. To becoming the kind of person whose destiny is no longer theoretical, but real. Visible. Unshakable. So don't wait. Don't stall. Don't pretend you don't know what to do. You know. You've always known. The question isn't whether you'll be given the opportunity. The question is whether you'll take it. Whether you'll stop flirting with potential and marry your mission. Whether you'll stop dancing around your destiny and finally step into it. Because the time is not someday. The time is now. And the person you're waiting to become is already waiting inside you. Not in the future. Right now. On the other side of a single, uncompromising, soul-altering decision. Make it.